Hey Craig, how you doing? Looks like it's just you and me again. Jay is late. And yeah, um about your performance. So, we've noticed that recently you've been having issues recording everything we're saying. So, Jay's finally here. So, we're going to give you one last shot. We really need you to improve your performance. I need you to write your name here stating that I've talked to you and that you will attempt to do better in the future and we will reevaluate in a couple weeks' time. Thanks. Hey, Jay.
Hi, Craig. Hey,
Hi.
Chris.
Hey. So,
So, have we found a replacement for him yet?
no, I just gave him his written warning.
Oh, okay.
You got to be professional.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I was not here. Because you know me, I'm not professional even remotely.
Not in the slightest. Um, I, I, speaking of that, I we're starting to get played at Synergy, my local gaming store, more often now,
Oh,
and
here it
uh,
comes.
well, I had to tell him I was like, yeah, Tuesdays when it's me and Jay playing video games, that's variety, whatever, and there's no stopping us in what we say, so it can be really bad. I was like, but however, Saturdays during when we play D&D, that's gonna be PG-13, and um, Fridays I'll also keep it PG-13, no matter what I'm doing,
Yeah.
because that's usually it's just me, and that's fine. I think that works. Um, so when we were playing this Saturday, I kind of mentioned to them ahead of time. She's like, "Yeah, just remember this will get aired, so don't swear. It's PG-13, so there's one fuck, and that's mine."
Yep. It belongs to the
And
DM.
and one of my players, she said she's a fuck like 3 times in a row, like fuck fuck fuck, and it was just uh no,
The new.
it's mine.
That's the new player.
Yeah, and then
Well,
later on too, I actually said the F word, and
so
to be true,
so basically you guys used up an entire month's worth of fucks,
yes. And then like I used the F word later on, and Dimitri was like, "Chris, it's PG-13."
and I've got no more fucks to give. My fucks have run a dry because you have no
Uh,
more fucks to hand out.
so we're gonna trigger all those fucks in this episode.
Oh,
Um,
are we ever? You just sent me that link, you know.
so
Oh,
when I sent you the link, and you will post it in the write up, right, Jay?
no, I probably won't because I'll forget.
You need to write it up and post it up in the write up, or else they won't be able to read it.
Well, hey, I'll message you tomorrow that, hey, I'm posting the podcast, and then you can be like, hey, post that link. And then I'll be like, I don't know how to post the link. Why don't you come do it?
You copy paste, man. It's not that hard. You can figure
Anyway,
it out. So yeah, I saw this a couple days ago. Um, and I know it's already made its rounds through the popular D&D forums like Reddit and Nerd Immersion and a few others like that. Um, Essentially, it was an interview with Jeremy Crawford um, for I think it was the
sort of reading.
comicbook.com website. I don't think there was a panel or anything. They just had a chance to
Sh-
interview him.
Sure.
Um, and he basically stated our stance is that if something has happened in a book since 2014, that's the year Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition core rulebook came out. If it happened before that, it's not considered canonical for the games,
Yeah.
and that really bugs me.
Oh, oh, it bugs the shit out of me.
So I understand his. I think there's multiple concepts, and maybe he didn't have enough time to
All right.
explain it
Let
fully. Hold on. Let me get my thoughts out first.
all right.
Maybe he didn't get enough time to kind of explain it fully. Maybe he was saying, say, hey, when we're doing our development, we don't consider things outside of fifth edition when we make our content, which would make a lot of sense because you can't limit stuff too much. But at the same time, there's plenty of evidence in fifth edition that they're referencing stuff from second edition.
Oh yeah.
Um, so from a development standpoint, his statement makes sense. They're like, hey, we need more fifth edition stuff. You know, we're writing new canon, we're making new canon. Don't be tied down to stuff that happened before the beginning of fifth edition. But if something happened in fifth edition, make sure that we're not contradicting ourselves.
All right.
Which in and of itself is weird because of how Icewind Dale and Storm King's Thunder relate to each other.
Yeah, I want to read the exact quotes. That way, we're not misrepresenting anything that was said. Uh,
Well,
that,
the question was provided to him that he said,
well,
um,
I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I'm just reading from the article you just sent me. So, as for what is considered canon in the D&D RPG, Crawford provided a very simple answer. If you are looking for what's official in the Dungeons and Dragons role playing game, it's what appears in the products for the role playing game. Crawford said, basically, our stance is that if it has not appeared in a book since 2014, the year that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition core rulebook came out, we don't consider it canonical for the games.
right, and that's what makes me think that he was talking more about when they're developing stuff for fifth edition.
And
And
if that is actually the case, and it's like you said, he didn't go into great detail on this. This was just a quick interview. It sounded like,
right,
but if it is just for what they're trying to write going forward, I would not expect them to be deep diving back into second ed stuff. I mean, that would
right,
be, I don't expect Spider-Man writers to go deep diving into things that happened in the '60s.
right. I think it came across in this interview where people are asking him, people were asking him, was like, what's canon? What should I do for this? What should I do for that? And he was trying to basically say, there's another quote he had earlier. It's like, the second you sit down and you writing your stuff for Forgotten Realms, that's your Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we do to our Forgotten Realms. It's your Forgotten Realms. You do what you want. So I just think that there's probably gonna be a lot of cross wires on it because it sounds really bad right at the start, but I really think
It
that it's
sounds
not.
horrible. Yeah, like the
Right.
statement is, it sounds absolutely fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, be, I honestly, I want to talk a lot about nostalgia tonight. Anyway, I started watch. I've watched the 5 episodes of the new He-Man show that are out, and it's got me. Yeah, there's so much issue with nostalgia, and when it comes to anything where there are massive fans, and you've got decades of data, as it were, you have to be incredibly careful and meticulous when you start messing with what is canon, what is not canon. You have to be very cautious because it's not hard to alienate a fan base.
Right.
Fans, especially nerd fans, are super fucking fickle about this stuff, myself included.
So that's why I think I found it very weird, and that's kind of like after reading all of what he said in this article, that I really think that's more of a development standpoint than it is a this is how we push things going forward.
Let's
Because
hope so.
even if you take what he said um, to bear, right? He's already messed up that one statement because of how Icewind Dale and Storm King's Thunder fit together. Okay, Storm King's Thunder is based on a certain year. Remember, the Frostmaiden is like 4 years before that. End of the fourth edition timeline, beginning of fifth edition timeline,
Yeah.
and you can't tell me that um, with the events that happen in that book, they're not mentioned at all in Storm Kings because Storm King came out and was published years ago,
Yep.
and so he's even messed up his own kind of canon logic there. But I guess also at the same time too, you kind of have to expect they're not going to follow the strict canon stuff, and they're kind of going to let you figure things out. Um, another big example of that is actually the Wild Beyond the Witchlight book. The Feywild that they have previewed is not the Feywild that was in fourth edition. And I
Right.
think by that hand, it's also the same, not the same Feywild that was in 3.5.
I don't think
That
they ever.
hasn't,
I don't remember them really releasing much on Feywild and 3.5 anyway.
well, in fourth, that's what I can at least attest to. There is a map of the Feywild,
Hmm.
and that's what I worked off of, for this Al campaign. Um, and a lot of what I'm doing is trying to bring that in and trying to get information about those areas. And then you look at the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and it's like, oh yeah, we just made up this whole new domain of Prismera, and that's where everything takes place now. So, what happened to the Feywild in fourth? Do they not care? And just like, hey, yeah, that existed then, but it's ever changing and whatever. So it's like, well, it kind of matters. A lot of people like Fey. It's
Yeah, truthfully, if they're not sticking to what is known and what is canon, I think you as a fan of fourth edition are probably going to get it worse than me. I'm a fan of second edition, fan of third edition. I never touched fourth particularly, so I don't have any attachment to that. The stuff that happened in second edition, while they can kind of ignore it, they can't just do away with it. I mean, Juristu Arden, all of those, companions of the hall, literally just all the stories for all of the characters that they, like to build things around and so forth were in second edition. The 10 Towns was created in second edition. They wrote the whole campaign based around that. And they didn't alter very much from what was known about it at that point. So
yeah,
yeah, like it seems like they're not really doing away with anything from second edition. As far as the Feywild, I can't say how much they're altering that because I never touched it. So
yeah. But like they've referenced stuff that's happened in fourth edition, like the spell plague and a few
yeah,
things. Um, you know, they've used cataclysmic events and other kind of huge world-changing effects to kind of like play with the canon, bury old canon, come up with new canon, and all that is great and everything. And of course, as a DM at the table, you can kind of do whatever you want with the canon that you're playing in.
yeah,
But I think a majority of the players though want that stability of a ongoing canon.
they do.
Um, like Star Wars is a great example. Like everything that happened in the movies happened,
Uh,
and
but only
then
the stuff in the movies.
but only stuff in the movies. And then you have all these books and other crazy things that were written. Okay, all pre Disney,
Yep.
and a lot of them were really cool. Had a lot of great extra adventures. The Jedi Academy, Jedi Outcast game series was really well done and added a lot to the lore post episode 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and there were a lot of cool books. Like Chewbacca's death is something that has stuck with me from the books. Now that Disney owns everything, and they're like, okay, they have to draw a line in the sand with like what is and is not canon.
Yep.
That was probably a very hard decision, and they knew they were going to alienate some people, but they wanted to basically open it up for other people. Like, there's no point in us telling a story with 7, 8, and 9 when we have to bring in Mara Jade, we have to bring in
It's-
Clones of the Emperor, we have to bring in Chewbacca's death, we have to bring in Boba Fett, we have to bring in this, have to bring in that. It was too restrictive,
They
and
were.
the
They
stuff
were.
was
I mean,
already there.
honestly, they're also looking at the money that's there. If
Yeah,
you start having to do exactly what you were saying to make these new films, I don't know that they would make as much money going forward.
yeah.
Like the idea of making these new films was to build for a new audience.
So I'm very happy with how they're kind of like taking parts of the books that are out there and kind of canonizing them in the new shows and whatnot.
I mean, in
You
the
know,
the basically the last movie, a whole hell of a lot of it was from the Dark Empire comic.
Yeah. Um, but like, are they going to keep going further and say that Palpatine actually had this grand master plan to basically build this empire because he knew that species that existed between universes was going to come and eat everybody because
Probably
they are
not.
immune to the Force? No, and should they? Hell no,
No.
because that's Mass Effect.
Yeah. 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 Kind of. Yeah.
No, that is Mass Effect. That is where they got the idea for Mass Effect. They read that book and went, huh, yeah, let's make a game out of that. Did we get the Star Wars license? No? Okay, it's called Mass Effect now.
Yeah,
That's
but the
literally what happened.
yeah, but the was it the Reapers? I think that's what they're
Reapers,
called.
yeah.
Yeah, they were not from outside of the universe. They were outside of the galaxy, and they would come
Yeah.
every 50,000 years to cleanse the galaxy or some shit like that.
But that's in the Star Wars books.
Yeah, I never read them, so I wouldn't know
That's
everything
why
that.
he built that's why
Yeah.
he built the Death Star, so he could blow up the big essentially Reaver ships.
Oh, okay.
And you couldn't sense them with the Force, okay? Because they live outside of that universe or that galaxy.
Mhm.
Um, and because only things in that galaxy have midichlorians, they couldn't. They had no ways of fighting them. They were like immune to
No, wait, wait,
lightsabers.
wait. Was Metachlorians from the books, or was that some shit they made up in the movies?
No, that was tied in later.
Okay, okay. So it started with the movie. That's what I thought.
I think so. Yeah. But there was a reason why they couldn't touch them with the Force. They just didn't know why. And then midichlorians came around and like,
Right?
yeah,
And
they
it's
only
like, oh,
exist in
that's
our
why. Yeah,
universe.
yeah.
That's why. Yeah. So, but then again, going back to D&D, there's a lot of that crap in D&D. And to basically just blow it all away with a hand wave, which is not what I think he did. I think he did do that, but I don't think
I don't
intentionally.
think that's what he meant. I
Right.
mean, just from reading it and just looking at other stuff, I don't feel that's what he meant. Obviously, we have to wait and see, but
Yeah. The one of the statements he says in there is that the moment you're at the game table, it's no longer our Dragonlance quotes or our Forgotten Realms quotes. It's your Forgotten Realms. It's your
yeah,
Dragonlance. You're telling the stories and the settings. Do whatever you want.
that is one thing that sets Dungeons and Dragons or just tabletop in general apart from literally every other form of media. I
Right.
mean, you do that in Star Wars, and that's not going to work because it's what's in the films that matters. In Dungeons and Dragons, there are no real films. There are, but they're fucking terrible, and nobody thinks of them as anything canon. Uh,
But there's
like,
there's also there's also a big part of me too that wants to know what the ending to those things were. Like when I was writing that Xanathar trap,
mhm,
what how did Waterdeep end? When I found information that Xanathar was the one who opened the door and got thrown away by that gold dragon that's on the inside, then that's really cool. I really like that. I can use that later.
yeah.
Will I use it in my Waterdeep game if I ever get back to that? No, because it was my group that got there and did it.
See, they used to do a
Um,
lot of the storytelling in novels.
yeah,
I truthfully, I don't even know if they're still writing them. I know they've got some. I know the Dragonlance ones are coming out at some point. I haven't seen a new Forgotten Realms novel other than Salvatore stuff in a few years.
I don't know if they would do that beyond Salvatore because well, I would say this. There is a lot of novels that come out for World of Warcraft. Okay. World of Warcraft has this kind of thing like every time they have a new expansion, there's usually an accompanying novel that goes with it. And those novels usually focus on the kind of the build up to the expansion. Okay. And Christine Golden is the one that kind of writes most of those. But she
Mhm.
doesn't make up the story. She's kind of told like what the story is, and then she's supposed to kind of just go in and fill in the gaps, and then they come back and say, "Hey, can you add this, change this, do this?" And she writes the novels because she knows a lot of the lore and knows a lot of the things, but she's not making up the the tent poles of the story, so to speak. It's a very odd writing position to be in, a very hard writing position to be in.
Right.
Um,
So I'm just a
So
interject here real quick. I am looking at the novels.
yeah,
They are still writing them. Not a lot of them. Like there were none written in 2017 at all. There's a few that came out in 2018. Almost half of them, or a third of them, they're just Salvatore's stuff. The other ones seem to be something called Endless Quest, which I'm not familiar with. Uh, yeah, like the current stuff from about 2018 on is just very, very different from what I had
yeah.
seen previously.
So what I was saying about Kristen Golden is that she gets a lot of crap from a lot of people
Now, who is
on
she?
Reddit. She writes the WoW novels.
The WoW novel, World of
Yeah.
Warcraft novels? Okay.
Yes. She gets a lot of crap for writing those stories, and then she gets a lot of crap for like running WoW into a ditch because the story is just tanking.
Hmm.
When all she's doing is just writing the novels and being told kind of like what the story should be.
Yeah.
I figure a lot of that would happen outside of Salvatore with Dungeons and Dragons, where people are like, "Hey, write a novel. Here's what you can talk about, and go." And they'll write
Yeah,
something. It may
you're
be
not wrong.
entertaining,
Yeah.
and it's not going to come. It's not going to be fulfilling enough because you're trying to try this larger grand story, and then like people will just shit on that author, and you hate to be in that spot. Salvatore can keep running Dritz until the end of time because guess what? Dritz isn't in any of the fifth edition books. He doesn't exist. There's the reference to him like Frostmaiden, like the Dritz fan of Dritz, you know.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, he's just a novel character in the
Yeah, like,
Forgotten Realms settings of my game.
everything since 2016. 2016, there was, writer Aaron M. Evans, who wrote The Devil You Know, and Ed Greenwood, who I'm very familiar with, wrote Death Mask. And then 2017, there was nothing. 2018,
What?
they have the Endless Quest that started, and then they also started writing a Young Adventurer's Guide, and they've been releasing those books every so often, like 2 or 3 a year. But
Death Mask? The death that, the mask that kills people?
no, the Death Mask are a, cult, if I recall correctly from, yeah, no, they are not in Waterdeep, if I'm correct, or they're not in the Sword Coast. It's been a long time. Let's see. Death Mask
My
D&D.
my reference was to a Patton Oswalt stand-up sketch where he finds a movie called Deathbed, the bed that eats people,
That's awesome.
and it's an actual movie. And he goes on and talks about how there's probably this carpenter that built the bed and kind of like threw out his back, but like people are gonna know how good of a job I did with Deathbed, the bed that eats people comes around. And so every
Okay,
time I hear some dumb title like Death Mask, it's Death Mask, the mask that kills people.
yeah, see, that actually makes way more sense. Okay, yeah, like Death Mask, if I'm remembering right, they started down in like Cormier or Symbia or somewhere. Apparently, with this novel, they are in uh,
Waterdeep.
Waterdeep.
Because, we can't do anything without being Waterdeep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is 2016, so this is right after the sort of the transition. So they were still trying to figure out what the fuck was going on.
I wonder if they got the card name right.
What card
Hold on.
name?
Xanathar.
I don't know.
No, they messed it up. They
Yeah,
messed it
they
up.
just call him Xanathar, not the
It,
Xanathar.
correct. They just call him Xanathar Guild Kingpin and not the Xanathar Guild Kingpin. Wow.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Well,
ruining my lore
they're messing with their lore. All right. So let's talk He-Man real quick. Masters of the Universe. Have you
with
watched it yet?
not Dungeons and Dragons.
It this is it ties in. I want to go on the nostalgia thing real quick.
Okay, well, you
Have
can't mention a single thing about it because by the
Okay.
time this podcast comes out, um,
Yeah,
it won't even
we
have
do
been
have friends.
it won't even been a week since it got released.
Yeah,
So
I'll try. I won't say anything specifics. I'll
you can talk
avoid
about
all that.
nostalgia and how
Yeah.
things coming back are killing your nostalgia and go.
No, it doesn't to me. Uh So I have a number of friends who have already seen it. I have a number of friends who heard from other friends that it was terrible and they're not going to watch it. Naturally, Kevin Smith is defending it as he should. I sat and watched it, and mind you, that there are only 5 episodes out. I think I've heard that they're releasing it in 2 parts. I don't know when the other episodes are supposed to come out. And when I watched it, the first couple of episodes, I was kind of thrown off because I was trying to figure out, is this written for kids or is this written for adults? The
Very much
farther
for adults.
Well, it was very hard to tell on that first episode, because the first
With all the
episode.
blood.
No, there's very little blood in it, very little. Uh, the very first episode, it's it is the throwback episode.
Yes.
Obviously, the animation style's way better, but it is the throwback episode to the original cartoon. It's got the little, you've got your guy showing up that you never used to see in the cartoon. You have Orko being Orko. You have He-Man literally dropping 1980s cheesy lines exactly as he would have in the 1980s cartoon. And then basically by the end of that episode and the beginning of the next episode, it's gone off on a completely different direction.
Hmm.
The first episode is what people want. I say people, it's what the old fans want. It's the nostalgia. It is basically the original cartoon just redone. And then it actually starts going and actually telling a real story. You
Hmm.
get character development, you get lore that never was in the original show, and you get a great cartoon.
Hmm.
But people hate it because they're just stuck on this idea of, I just wanted the original He-Man with nothing but cheesy lines and terrible plots and horrible and better animation, I guess. That's all they wanted, was they wanted a terrible fucking show with better animation. Cuz let's be honest, the original He-Man is not good. Never was. I mean, it was nothing more than a sales pitch for toys. That's
Yeah.
all it was. There wasn't much there. So now they actually have an opportunity to build and expand and make something way fucking better than it ever was or ever could have been for an adult audience. And people are going to boo-hoo it because it's actually trying to be better than it originally was.
So what I always found weird is that when the first trailer dropped, it set certain expectations. Okay. The second trailer dropped, the expectations changed. You could tell that just by watching the trailer.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
at this point in time, I had not seen any of the drama on behind. Because there's always drama.
I avoid any of the drama
So
online, but I have friends who are like,
yeah. So it was pretty obvious what the show was going to be about in the official trailer, not the teaser with the "I Need a Hero" song. Yeah,
right, yeah, yeah.
right. So in the actual show is exactly what the trailer said, and that's why I'm going to leave it at that. So I wasn't disappointed. I liked everything that I saw. I thought it was interesting, and it was definitely better than um because I never really watched the '80s show that much. It was definitely better than the '80s show because the
Yeah.
'80s show is very '80s. It's
I
even
grew
hard
up
to go
with
back
the
and
'80s show.
watch. It's even hard to go back and watch like Transformers
Yep.
because it's very '80s.
Except for the '80s
If
movie, which was still amazing.
if you wanted to watch He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, that's just a reboot and a retelling of the original show. That happened back in 2002 and nobody watched it.
Yep.
And that's all I'm going to say. Nobody watched it then, and everyone's projecting dumb crap on it now.
So
Is Kevin Smith a salesman for nerds right now? Like, if I want to sell a product, do I want to go through Kevin Smith? Yes, that's what he does. Did he did he say no? I hate He Man 5 years before he said He Man was my favorite cartoon as a kid. Yes. Does it make him a hypocrite? Yeah. Was the show good? Did you enjoy watching the show?
well, the answer to that is a lot of people did not. But that's because I do
It,
feel that's just because they're stuck.
and is it because of like what reason? If you look at the title of the show, it says exactly what the show is. So you can't go in to watch Star Wars, all right, and then complain that it's not Star Trek. That's all I'm going to say on that point. You know ahead of time, then don't watch it.
Yeah, it's like they are. I just love the idea that they're actually trying to build on this because it's a cool sort of setting with no lore behind it, really. Yeah, you've got these
Yeah.
episodes from the '80s that were all terrible, and you get little bits and pieces of Preternia and Subternia, and a little bit about the planet Eternia, and that's most of the extent of it. So you have just this media that they can build on and actually make something out of. Yeah, with Star Wars, you only had the 3 movies originally, so there wasn't a lot of lore there. There's so much more they could actually build upon going forward.
I mean,
You know,
in Star Wars is a great example of it too. It's like, hey, um, we what was Obi Wan's stupid dumb line? Sorry, I haven't memorized Star Wars like
May
you
the
have.
force be with you.
No, um,
You don't want to
uh,
buy death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life. That was Qui-Gon, but or
no, no,
you
no.
don't
I
want to
think
sell
right.
me death sticks. Sorry, let me get it right.
Um, it's when he's talking with Luke the first time, and he says something along the lines of Clone Wars. He mentions the Clone Wars.
Oh, I haven't heard that name since the Clone Wars or something or other.
Yeah, that is the only piece of information that existed about the Clone Wars
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
before George Lucas decided, hey, I'm going to make that a movie series.
yep,
And the Clone Wars was fantastic. It was a whole different thing. If they would have
yeah,
just followed the same story of everything, it just would have been crap. And I think that, like, part of me is upset, kind of bring it back on topic. Like,
yeah.
part
So
of me
I
is
was getting
upset.
ready to bring it back to D&D here.
Part of me is upset when someone goes, "Yeah, everything that happened before X period of time, we don't give a crap about it anymore." Because there's a lot of people out there who give a lot of craps about the continuity of how things go.
Yep,
Because we're OCD, we're ADHD, we're very over analytical. We have to know. We can't have those missing things there, or else we're going to wash our hands 100 times before we can move forward. You know,
continuity is very important. Now you can still move forward with a product or a story or whatever with by ignoring a lot of what's happened before. Just sort of write something that does not interact with previous stuff.
right?
Icewind Dale is sort of a good example of that. While it takes place in a setting that has previously been pulled to death, it still just ignores much of the previous lore. It doesn't
Eh,
rewrite it, it just doesn't go into it.
right. You're set up Kelvin's car once in that entire place. You could write a. We just played a video game that didn't leave Kelvin's car.
Yeah. Yep.
We literally just played a video game
And they
that
and
was
they
run around Calvin's car for 6 hours and kill shit.
and to not fuck with the lore, they were nice enough to set it during a time period when there was basically opening for them to have this, scenario.
Yeah, and then there's still the book that our good friend Jeffrey Ludwig was writing. But with the crystal shard that you can run. A lot of the game is based off of that. It just kind of took it and went in a very explosive, weird direction. Does that overwrite the the campaign book? No.
Oh,
So like
so
I've fought with this feeling of like people are breaking my nostalgia, especially when it comes to Transformers, because Transformers is more personal to me than He-Man is or Star
right,
Wars is. Um, and I just kind of had to really go, all right, I don't care anymore. I just don't care if this cartoon for this season is what I want in Transformers, because they're not making the show just for Christopher Wavels. They're making the show for a green budget.
yeah,
So I will, however, watch a show and see if they pay respect to the core material. So, like, I don't remember the last Transformers cartoon was, but I know the last one that I watched was one solely focused for kids. It was drawn in like a very almost
Kid
DuckTales
kid
style
kid friendly
animation.
manner, yeah.
It was very kid friendly. All the Transformers are very big and blocky, and there was no dark humor or anything like that at all. Um, but it paid a lot of respect to uh, the core material. Like the characters are still like Optimus Prime is still Optimus Prime. You know, they didn't mess with the character and turn him into a stupid lion. um, was it that? No, it wasn't that one.
I wouldn't have a clue, I'm not this
Oh,
is
it
outside of my
was.
wheelhouse.
Was it that? I think it was Rescue Bots, maybe.
I
Um,
don't know, I don't know.
but it was but like there are other cartoons that are focused that kind of swing out of nowhere, like Beast Wars. Okay,
Mhm.
Beast Wars is essentially a sequel to the '80s cartoon, and it's amazing in that respect because it expands upon the lore. It brings in a lot of new things. It pulls back characters that used to exist. It talks about stupid things like Starscream's immortal spark and dumb things like that. And it does things really well. And then you look at Beast Machines and how horrible Beast Machines was with trying to wrap up the story and get things to work. And that cartoon was bad, in my opinion, because they didn't pay respect to Beast Wars, which is what they kind of came off of. They didn't care about the characters. They rewrote the characters. They just said, "Oh, that name looks good. He's evil now. Why? Fuck you. He's evil now." you
See,
know.
you have to at least try to pay respect to the original. With the He-Man show, they absolutely did that. You get a whole bunch of little cameos throughout it. There's all sorts of stuff, and that was one of the things as a kid watching that show is you just wanted to see a character that you hadn't seen before. That was the whole point of watching it.
So
They yeah, they
I
do
did
that
watch
a lot.
I did watch the after show. Like I said,
I
I
haven't
didn't watch
watched it
He-Man.
yet.
I didn't watch He-Man as a kid, but they brought in Skunkinator, which really isn't a spoiler, but they brought in Skunkinator.
Nah, you mean Stinkor, and it's not a spoiler.
Stinkor.
They showed him in the trailer, so
So Stinkor is in it. I didn't know he was never in the original show. He was just a toy.
yep.
And do you know who voiced him?
I do not.
Jason Mewes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Somebody did tell me that.
I thought that was great
Yeah,
because he's in everything Kevin Smith does.
that is
Um,
true.
and Man at Arms was really the only character that I really liked, from the old show. And Sir Davos did Master at Arms proud.
Oh, okay, that's
So
who the voice was.
yeah, I couldn't place it. I had to look it up. I was like,
Okay.
that sounds
Uh,
very Scottish and
but yeah,
proper.
with Dungeons and Dragons, it's the same thing. Try not to let what the company is doing as far as what's canon, what isn't canon. Don't let it disrupt your enjoyment of the game, especially since you can just write your own game. If you don't like the fact that they're doing every single campaign in, the Sword Coast, you know, then just don't run them. Buy the books that you need and just run your own stuff. That's the whole point of it. At some point, they'll start actually releasing real novels again, I would assume, and yeah, then maybe things will start flowing a little more naturally to how they used to be. Maybe not.
I don't know if novels ever come back.
I mean, I read them, so I'm sitting here looking at a bunch of Magic the Gathering novels on eBay right now.
How much is the Ravnica book worth?
I don't know. Let's
'Cause
see.
I still have that sitting around in my box.
Guild Pack, Ravnica. It's not very valuable. Like,
2005? Was it 2005? Oh wow.
yeah, it's been a while. It's like $6 or something. But
Yeah, none of those matter anymore. You know, when it comes to Magic the Gathering's lore.
oh yeah, Magic the Gathering lore is all over the damn place. Yeah.
No, they actually brought it in.
They've coalesced it. Yeah, they did a
Yeah.
good job with it. Because if you were still looking at the original Magic the Gathering lore, my goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the more of the spark that they just had, and they kind of like brought everything back in. That helped a lot.
yeah.
Um,
But lore is allowed to change. It doesn't have to stay stationary, and it shouldn't. It needs to be expanded upon. Anything that has a setting, you have to have the lore moving forward. Otherwise, the property dies. People will get bored with it.
yeah, and again, no one watched the 2002 He-Man cartoon.
Yep.
It was
So
good. I liked it a lot,
I saw 1 or 2 episodes. I am, I'm just as at fault as everybody else. I never watched it either. So,
and I never watched the 80s one, so maybe that's why I liked it a lot.
could be. Yeah, you didn't have that nostalgia factor.
I wasn't allowed to watch He-Man when I was a child because Skeletor was the devil.
It's the devil. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is the devil. So let's talk campaigns for what we ran. You ran the Alkin, Alfolk. I ran my campaign.
Yeah, I
Uh,
ran I ran more Elfolk. I talked a bit about actually at the beginning, like how they made that announcement that we just talked about for 45 minutes. And I brought up a map of the new Feywild. I was like, so I'm gonna have to make a statement in there, like any of this forest here, it could be where the owls live. Um, and we already talked about the fact that owls are no longer Owlkin, they're
yeah, they are.
Owlin,
No, they're not.
and they're coming out in the Strixhaven and not the Feywild book. So it's all disappointing, but I'm still pushing on, writing what I want to write.
Mhm.
Um,
Thus the reason they will always be Alkin to me. I don't care if they call them something else. Go for it. I'm not going to call them that.
I my stuff went well. I had a very busy weekend. It was a very rough weekend for me. So it was very difficult for me to get ready. I had a bunch of encounters planned that again they just didn't decide to go to and do. Um, I'm having a difficulty being creative enough with encounters that will challenge characters that can fly. I
Yeah,
knew that would be a problem. So the
lots of
last thing I
archers. Lots of archers.
no, I don't. I'm trying not to do that. So what I did in this last one is I had an awakened tree, and what I had the awakened tree do was I made it huge from large. I made it huge, and then I gave it like a reach of like 20 feet.
Okay,
Um,
that's. I think that's an extra 5 feet more than it normally would have, but that's all right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, 15's huge.
Um,
Gargantuan would be up to 20.
okay, and then I'll probably make a gargantuan then. Oh yeah, so it has reach normally of just 10 feet, and it's huge. So I made it bigger than that. So
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, yeah.
So I
See,
gave it a reach.
even I don't know the fucking reach.
So I gave an extra long reach, and I made it 100 foot tall.
Big tree.
So right, it's a big ass tree. So when they see it, they're kind of drawn to it. And there was just this huge area. I think it was a 20-foot radius circle that if they started their turn on that ground, they took necrotic damage. And if they ended their turn on the ground, they took necrotic damage. And so what the tree would do was is it kind of had like a layer action where if something was on the ground, it would try to grapple it with roots and then pull it 15 feet to the trunk of the tree.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
And that worked pretty well. Um, and it had its slam attack that I added a if you get hit while flying, you fall to the ground. And I added that in just because I needed people to get out of the sky. And I also kind of wanted people to use their reaction with the Elfolk where they do the reaction and they stop falling. So I kind of played around with that for a little bit. The problem I ran into is if a player gets knocked unconscious,
They die.
they immediately take two death saves failures on their
Yep.
turn. Because bam, bam, I didn't even think about that. So I can't have that happen. And I think it was a little much. So I'll just have it if they enter it or when they end their turn there to take. necrotic damage that will work a lot better. And I think that um, every instead of having it so every time that they gets knocked out of the sky, they have a chance to just get grappled by the trees and branches.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, honestly, that'll probably work better.
yeah, and overall, I think the encounter worked well. I had the branches. I let them hit any part of the tree that they wanted on the model. So if it's just a circle model, then it's gonna be a little more difficult. So essentially, they could just hit the branches and do half damage, or they could hit the trunk and do full damage. And then there's resistance even built on top of that, where basically it resists bludgeoning and piercing.
Right.
Um,
So you made it difficult to kill,
yeah, well, that's one
which
way to put
I
it.
mean,
We
that's
we have
fine.
a
I prefer difficult to kill things. So.
we have a fire druid with us. Okay, and this fire druid decided to use create bonfire on a tree that was dead, and it started a forest fire. Um, they were able to solve the forest fire. It wasn't that big of a deal. Um, but that's going to be in the game now. You
Nice.
come across a just burnt out field. You don't know why.
Something
But she
happened
wouldn't
here.
she wouldn't burn the tree because she was afraid I was going to have the tree burn more the forest down. And on one hand, yes, that's very I would do that. On
Yep.
the other hand, I'm not going to do the same thing twice.
I should have burned down a lot more stuff this past weekend and just forgot. So, as I tend to do, that's the reason I actually have a shirt that says I roll dice and forget things. Uh, my
Forget
players,
what?
I have a shirt that says I roll dice and I forget things.
What's a
You know,
shirt?
yeah, exactly. I forget things, and apparently so do you. So, my players were out in a large open field, grass about knee high. They are after some gnolls, and they end up they find the entire camp of gnolls. They already killed a whole like 20 something gnolls out in the field. Then they find the camp, and rather than putting together a proper plan, maybe trying to ambush a few of them, just sort of getting to jump on the leadership, et cetera, they're like, you know what? I think three of us are going to sneak down, get within archery range, set some arrows on fire, and just light the camp on fire. So they end up lighting the camp on fire. They end up missing a few of the shots and lighting all of grass on fire, which then starts burning. Uh, 25 gnolls or so come pouring out of this camp, running up the hill at them. They start a fire between themselves and the gnolls. And that was the last time I remembered the fire. when these when the simple fact is that entire area they ended up fighting in should have been on fire before that combat ended. So, like, everybody should have died from smoke inhalation or, take burning damage, something. But the DM forgot, so they got, lucky on that one. Uh, I had also, before this campaign started, I had decided I was going to roll death saves for players, and this is the first time I've ever gotten to do that. So one of our players, you know which guy? It's the one we play video games with every Tuesday. So he ends up jumping out, leaving the fray to go after the one spellcaster that the Knolls have. That spellcaster is also standing behind the Den Mother with three really big fucking Knolls. So he breaks the concentration on the shaman, and then he's down there by himself, away from the group, surrounded by these badasses who immediately just pummel him into the fucking dirt. So he's laying over there. Then the rogue goes over there, feeds him a healing potion, and before the healing potion, I had to roll a death save for him. Naturally, I don't tell the players what I rolled, but I rolled a natural one. So immediately, that's two failed death saves. So rogue gets over there, feeds him a healing potion. All right, death saves are cleared up, no problem. They get back to fighting. He gets knocked down again. Next round, I have to make death saves for him again. Boom, natural one. So All right, two failed death saves. Another round of combat goes by. Nobody's managed to get him up. I'm like, surely, surely he's gonna at least make one of these saves. Boom, natural one, fucking death save. It's like, well, son of a bitch. Maybe having the DM roll the death saves is not the best idea after all.
Yeah. I don't getting a natural one and getting to two failures feels so bad.
Oh yeah,
Like it's just
I rolled three in a row. Three of them in a fucking row.
see my problem with it though is I don't know if it actually helps the tension. Like you want there to be tension in a fight. You want everyone to have like, these huge consequences of like, oh shit, he is about to die. We have to heal him now.
Uh huh.
Um, and I get that, and I just the natural one on the death save doesn't make that any better. You know, it
It
just
needs
makes it
it.
feel worse.
It. Nah, I mean, the tension is there if the players don't know whether they succeeded or not. The unconscious player, it is what it is. They can't affect anything. So whether they get more tense or not, I don't have a clue. But everybody else has to plan around that. Now the fact that my players have actually lost one of their party because of that, they'll be even more likely, I think, going forward to get people up when they go down. Because they could have gotten to him and fed him a healing potion, but instead they were trying to take out targets, which that makes sense. Take out the targets if you can, but now that they know that they can die, even more so is the campaign as I'm running it. Remember, they're inhabiting other people's bodies, so they don't know what happens to them when they die.
Yeah,
So that they'll have to figure that part out here soon. I haven't talked to Jacob about it, but we'll be talking about it Tuesday on the stream, I'm sure.
yeah. I don't know. I think if your players are very open with whether or not a death save was successful or not, like all mine are, then leaving the net negative one in there is okay because everyone's like, oh shit, we have to do extra stuff now. Um, there's a thought that I would say like if you wanted to have death saves be completely secret, okay, like 100% secret, like you roll a death save, you don't tell anybody what that death save was, and take away the crit, stand back up and take away the crit failure. I think that would lead to a better tension than the the crit failure one.
Maybe.
Um, because then you don't know if the person is alive or dead, whether or not they just hit their third one and failed. And it gives them a little more chance to like not have to go over there and you know save them immediately. They have a couple seconds, you know. Um, and then on top of that too, I don't think the DMs would feel as bad as they walked over and decided to shank somebody with a kobold
Yeah.
because that just accelerates the situation.
I mean,
I like the hit causing two or the area effect causing one. That I like. Um, but it takes a lot of the storytelling away from me if the very next if if they roll a crit one, I'm like, oh well, now the kobold's not gonna stab you. You
yeah.
know?
I mean, honestly, it's still the scenario of, do you hit a downed opponent? Truthfully, like, he should have been dead right off. When they
Yeah.
dropped him, there were still two other gnolls that hadn't even attacked, who could have just beat him dead, no problem. Me as the DM, I have to sort of make that discretionary call as to whether, well, I want him dead, or I want this. Yeah, I want my players to have a fighting chance. I tend to err on the side of giving them the opportunity to rescue people. But realistically, if it was a fight like that, he would have just been straight up dead.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult to be the dungeon master. You have to make those calls. You know, I prefer my
Yeah,
players to have a good time and worry less about what really should happen.
I see that a lot too, where everyone's like, "You got to remember, you're telling a story with them, you know. So if they're not doing what your story is, you're crap." I I've been thinking about that more too because like how Icewind Dale went evil, and like I kind of feel my players going evil again. Like that's on
Oh no.
me as a DM. You know,
No,
I got to
it
fix that.
isn't. It really isn't.
Well, there's there's something to be said about if you use a DM can put them in situations where they can do good or they can do bad. Um, and then they have to choose whether or not to do good or do bad, right?
Yeah.
But if you're only putting them in situations that the best outcome is you just doing bad is the best choice, then that's on me.
I've had a lot of players over the years, and I just want to point out you can lead the player to the good side, but you can't make them not kill the peasant.
Right? They're
'Cause-
not murder hoboing.
oh, that's
They
good.
just
That's a step in the right direction. You might just, if you're lucky, you might end up with pure neutrality instead of right out evil.
well, it is the Feywild. I don't mind them being chaotic,
Yeah, I mean
but
chaos is
it's
supposed to be a part of it.
but it's like, well, they're already doing things that in the long run would cause a lot of issues down the road.
This just sounds
And
like your players. Yeah, it sounds like your players are the problem.
I think part of that's just it's just me. It's like, well, I gave him this thing, and I'm like, well, don't do anything bad with it. And then he does something bad with it, and you're like, well, you were just doing what your character would have done. So I don't know. It's I I really need to finish writing my Dread of the Ice Devil 2 module so I can focus more on the Owl
Yeah, I
campaign.
was about to say you got to almost be done with that by now.
Uh, I got the dungeon to write and I have all the monsters. I just gotta put in paper. I just keep getting distracted with
Yeah,
other things.
it's due next weekend.
Yeah,
Well, sounds like you're gonna have a busy week again.
yeah, yeah.
But like last time when you were writing module and stuff, you're gonna be hellaciously busy this week. But once it's done, and you're gonna feel good about it. So,
Maybe.
well, this is you I'm talking about. Okay, I'm gonna feel good that you're done with it. You can bitch and moan about the fact that it's probably terrible, and then it'll sell really well, and you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad.
Maybe it was only half terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just darn it. I lost my thing I wanted to say. Crap.
You're welcome.
No, because it's something I want to talk about when I'm on this thing.
Oh well.
It was something not related to nostalgia.
Yeah, we did talk a lot about nostalgia tonight,
We
but I
we
feel it
we
was important. It was important to talk about it.
talked about everything but. Oh, here it is. It was a question posed on Dungeon Master Resources.
Oh boy, these are always fun. Shoot,
Where would a powerful book on necromancy be held? And I'll tell you the first answer that came to my mind after you tell me yours.
where would a powerful book on necromancy be held?
Yep.
Probably in the Lich's left hand.
I think I guess this is
The right hand is where the staff of power is at, but the left hand is where the necromantic book is at.
the first answer that popped into my head. I shit you not. It is a Lich's coochie. I don't know
Okay.
why.
Oddly enough, my second answer was going to be Uranus. So
Uh,
because I'm 12,
it's in your butt.
it's yeah, your mom.
Just so dumb. But the best answer that everyone's liked on that is the cabin in the woods from
Oh
Evil
yeah,
Genius.
no, yeah, that's a very appropriate answer.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah.
yeah. I've been kind of wanting to throw something in like that into the Owl campaign, just an evil cabin in the middle of the woods.
Oh, do it. I mean, hags love living in cabins.
Hags love cabins.
Hags love cabins, man. It's true.
But I'm not putting a book of necromancy into my campaign. That's the last thing I need because I know what happened when I got a book of necromancy and when I was playing with my other DM.
Yeah, you're already complaining about your characters, your players doing evil stuff. What do you think happens if they get that book of necromancy? Somebody's using it. You know they are.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's what happens.
I just
Fucking
they're doing good. I really like how they're treating the owl characters. There's no issues with anything that they're doing. I just they're running through content and bypassing content that I'm setting up. I'm just like, well, crap. I don't know how to get them off the ground. Like I don't know how to. Well, so
you're
the
trying
biggest
to
the
you're,
first.
you're trying to get them from point A to point B with stuff along the way, and they're just going straight from A to B, ignoring the stuff along the way.
So what I did is I said that I took a page out of Frostmaiden, and this is what I think. I don't know if I told you this or even talked about this to you. I think that the reason they let the sled dogs and Icewind Dale have a period of mushing and a period
Oh
of
yeah, no, you
rest,
you told me you did, but go ahead and
yeah,
go through it.
is because they needed the players to have a point in time where they stop, where a random encounter could happen. Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
so it makes sense. I'm like, okay, you mush for an hour and then you wait for an hour, and then oh crap, the crag cats attacked, or the frost giant on the mammoth showed up.
Right.
Congrats, you're level 3. You just died.
Game
um,
over.
so I basically said that the owls, and I'll make this a suggestion in the campaign, are also able to fly over the forest. They can fly for an hour, but then they have to rest for an hour. Okay,
Yeah, makes perfect
and it
sense.
makes sense. But every time they rest for an hour, they just perch at the top of a tree.
Hmm. I mean, honestly, it just sounds like you need a lot more flying enemies.
I just don't want to throw a bunch of flying enemies at them.
Spiders,
Yeah, spiders work.
yeah, webs. Yeah, owl flying along hits a web. Oh shit, they're dinner now.
I did put in like part of subquest was that they had to go get more paper to repair the scrolls and the books in the library that get eaten by worms.
Right.
So as they're flying, they can encounter birch trees, and a very specific ritual has to be performed on these birch trees to collect the bark from the tree in a way that won't hurt the tree and give them enough paper to work from back at the library as like a material. Basically, they're gathering material components.
Yeah.
Um, so they have to go to the ground for that, um, and that's been helping. So I think I need something else very similar to that as well too.
We can come up with some ideas off the air. Don't want to talk
You
about it
need
while you.
you need
Yeah.
to collect shiny pebbles.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's ravens. Ravens like that. I don't know about
Penguin,
owls. Owls could. They could.
penguin.
I still. They're in the Feywild. I still say they collect small children.
Meh. I had a child show up in this last adventure. They didn't do
Oh,
anything with it. They just let it run
uh,
around and run away. Then again, if you
fail.
saw a child running through a forest,
Yeah, that's actually it's the old Men in Black thing. That's the most dangerous thing there.
pretty much, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've chatted enough about this.
We didn't even talk about D&D at all. All we talked about is He-Man and Star Wars.
We did talk a lot about it, but it all swung back to D&D. So
This is not a variety show.
sometimes it is. We talk about what we want. Bye, Craig. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. Check us out on Facebook at
There's no at in Facebook. It's just facebook.com/Grumpy Dungeon Masters.
and on Twitter
That'd be at Grumpy_DMs,
and on Instagram.
at Grumpy Dungeon Masters,
And also be sure to follow us on Twitch.
twitch.tv/Grumpy Dungeon Masters, where we play Rime of the Frostmaiden every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Fuck yeah.